Oh, please request permission, it says. Okay.
Does it allow you?
Yeah, now it's recording, it says. At least
Okay.
it shows it on me, but I don't know if it's your recording or my recording.
Okay, beautiful. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay. We'll come back to 12 Summers for another episode. We have, well, I call you Stilly as my honor guest today, and I'm very excited. Well, let me tell you a little bit about my podcast, 12 Summers. So 12 Summers is a context for fathers that, you know, I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and a lot of time in the midst of taking care of the kids, especially young kids, we feel like a lot of parents feel like it's a never ending task. But the reality is we really just have maybe 12 years with them till we lose that intimate or innocent bond between father and a young child, right? And it's only maybe at most 12 years for us to teach them all the important lessons, right? After 12 years, they're starting to become the young adult they're supposed to be, you know. I don't know for you, like for me at 13, I don't listen to my parents anymore. I'm like, you know,
same here.
You know, let me be. So it's really a context, right? 12 summers is like 12 years. We need to, there's a sense of urgency that we don't have a lot of time. I don't know if you can hear my son.
Yeah.
He's out there trying to get me out to play with him. So yeah, he's 4, and this is the sweet time between your father and son. So it's a context, and so a lot of fathers who listen to this, they actually told me like, oh man, like now I feel sad because I have like 8 summers left. I have 5 summers left. You know, like we start to get urgency that this is not going to last forever. Right. And for this podcast, I'm really hoping to serve all the fathers out there. So today we have Stilly. And last night I was thinking about like our relationship, and one of the profound event that happened between us is, well, for those who are listening, like this is the asshole that got me off coffee, right? And by calling him asshole, I mean I really meant my love and respect for this man, right? Because at the time, I mean, I thought I loved coffee and I was committed to coffee, but I was actually addicted to coffee. And during a long car ride, he actually talked me out of coffee. And for the listeners, like, just ask yourself, how many times in your life could someone talk you out of an addiction, right? And maybe you still love coffee and enjoy coffee. I mean, I still love coffee. You know, maybe once a year or twice a year, I see good quality coffee. I still drink it and enjoy the shit out of it. But when was the last time someone who had a meaningful conversation with you and talked you out of a addiction? And it was really addiction that I realized I had with coffee is, you know, because every time I see myself running low on coffee beans, I'm like, holy shit, I better go get some coffee, or like I hope it's not the end of the world tomorrow, because I won't have enough coffee to last me for like however time, you know. If I'm stranded on an island, I'll be fucked, you know. And I realized, man, I'm really developed a dependent relationship with coffee. So Silly actually talked me out of it. And because he has profound knowledge around health and well-being, and that's what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have you on the podcast today. And I want to kind of dig deeper into your knowledge and what you know, and better myself and everyone out there. So would you take a kind of take a minute, talk about who you are, what you do,
Yeah.
passion.
Well, first of all, thanks for the profound opening. I never even thought of it that way, as like 12 summers, you know. I'm not a father yet myself, but my brother just had his first, and he's about a year and a half old. So I spend a lot of time with him. Never even thought about that, you know. And it didn't make me sad, but it kind of impacted me, and it kind of hit me deep in the heart, just that idea, you know. And you have those 12 years, those 12 summers to have that impact and pass along those lessons. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a lesson for me from when I am a father. Well, for those of you listening, I'm referred to as Stili or Stilianessis, but my name is Yerasimos Stilianessis, but you can call me Stili. And yeah, health and wellness has just been a really big part of my life for, you know, going on 15 years, maybe a little longer, that I've just been committed towards learning everything I can on the topic of health. And, you know, when people talk about health, you know, very often they're just like, oh, what you eat and exercise, but it goes deeper than that. You know, we were talking about health on a psychological level, on an emotional level, and you can say spiritual level. And so, you know, I have a private coaching practice and a bodywork practice. And for those of you that don't know what bodywork is, I don't fix cars, but I work on the physical body. And so, from my experience and my knowledge, um, I look at the body as a repository, as a warehouse for all of your human experience. Everything that you've put in your body nutritionally, you know, different emotional events and traumatic events that have happened in your life, things that have been passed down to you through your lineage, you know, through past generations, that gets encoded in, you know, you could say your DNA as well. It's all stored in the body. And so when I work with people, I work with people holistically. And, you know, it's funny, one of the things, not funny, but one of the things I when I start working with people, I like to know, like, I don't mean to say this in like a derogatory way, but it's like, what are you a slave to, you know, in your life? Like what can't you live without? Like what substance or what food? And let's start taking a look at that. You know, for coffee, for a lot of people, it is an addiction. And so, yeah, it's been a long journey. You know, my main focus with my clients, beyond the one-on-one physical somatic body work that I do, it's rooted in Chinese meridian theory. So it's pretty alternative, and I work to help remove excess stress, excess tension, and trauma from the body and the nervous system. I would say overall, my focus is really helping people overcome self-sabotage, and getting them to really look at the external and internal reasons on why they are self-sabotaging. You know, January 1st comes around for all of us, and people go, okay, I'm going to start going to the gym, or I'm not going to drink for the next 2 months, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to stop eating, you know, white bread, whatever the case may be. And then like 1 week they're doing it, and then the next week they fall off. And why does that happen? You know, what's going on in a person's psyche and their psychology and their body that prevents them from making certain changes? So yeah, just for me, health is the foundation. I don't know. There's a quote that I have in all my emails, and I don't really. It's so funny. I should have it memorized, but let's see. I have it right here, and I found it like a decade ago, and it really resonated with me. And not because it was from an ancient Greek thinker, which is my lineage, but the quote goes like this: "When health is absent, wisdom cannot reveal itself. Art cannot become manifest. Strength cannot be exerted. Wealth is useless, and reason is powerless." And that was Herophilus or Herophilus. I'm not sure of the pronunciation. And when I saw it, it was from 300 BC. So you're looking at a really long time ago that there was this wisdom and this knowledge out there. And it's kind of how I approach my life, that, you know, in order to be the man that I want to be, the health is the umbrella, you know, what I put in my body, what I put on my body, the thoughts that I think, the people I interact with, um, the environment around me, all of that has an impact on my health. How I navigate stress, how I manage stress. It's really, really important. And on the simplest level, stress is what causes illness. And again, stress can come from foods, it comes from your environment, it comes from, working a job that you don't like, it could come from being in a relationship that you don't want to be in. And so how can a person monitor and lessen that stress, which is going to ultimately help their day-to-day quality life and support them, I think, to live a longer, more fulfilling life. So that's kind of just my general idea around that. And it's just a passion of mine, because my thoughts are, it's really awesome waking up in the morning, feeling so fired up to seize the day naturally, and I'm not knocking anyone for their, we all have our battles and our demons that we're working through. I definitely have the things that I deal with, but it feels good to not feel like I can't function without a cup of coffee, or I can't come down, or come down from, I need to smoke weed or I need to drink alcohol. You do it once in a while, cool. Like, I'm not trying to tell people to be hardcore or live how I live, but it's like, what are the things you do habitually and unconsciously? You just reach for the thing, you do it, and you don't even know why you're doing it, and you don't even know what's happening inside of you on a subtle level that's motivating you to do the behavior. What's the thought? What's the feeling first that then goes, oh, I need to do the thing. I need to grab the thing. I need to lessen the pain. I need to escape, whatever that is. And so it starts with a greater level of self-awareness, like really knowing yourself and introspection and going, oh, wait, why am I doing that thing? Why am I eating something I know isn't good for me? Why am I doing it? Like, it's like, and then you know the answer, but then you keep doing it. And so awareness is just one step. Having the conscious ability to make a different choice is a whole nother step in the direction towards, more empowered living around certain things.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Something you said about stress, kind of really hit home for me. Like, I'm 43 years old, and
Nice.
I didn't really pick up on how stress affects my health until like this year on a conscious level. Like we read about stress and all that, how that affect our well-being and all that, but it never like went into my head and made impact. But this year I kind of start realizing, man, like it's really one of the most profound killer for health and for men in many ways, right? And I study like science, right? I know all about stress, like how that changed our body's pathway from like a normal functioning pathway to like fight or flight, right? Like in ancient days when we're still living in the wild, if we are running away from like a big furry animal that's trying to kill us and eat us, the best strategy for the body is to shut down everything but for you to fight or flight, right? So when you're fight or flight mode, your body doesn't really care about the immune system, doesn't care about lowering your blood pressure. It doesn't really care about healing your body or repairing any wounds. It just direct all the energy for us to run away or to fight to death. So when that happens, it really kind of inhibit all the repairing mode in our body. And we carry that mechanism from however hundreds or thousands of years ago and made us the man, the human we are. So now when we go into stress, we go into the same response. It shut down everything else. It inhibit the immune response. It stop the repairing and all that. And over time, this effect accumulates and really just put such a toll on our health and body. And we kind of, a lot of people take pride in living like handling stress and dealing with stress, continuously nonstop, and not knowing that it's really hurting our body. And yeah, I can't believe I really just registered that thought in me this year. And so I start paying attention to stress, you know. And I'm with you on addiction, or relying on substance. um, I stopped coffee for sure since last year, and I also stopped consuming alcohol, uh, and I feel great. Just like I know it's fun to get drunk once in a while, but I don't even miss it. Like I enjoyed myself and my friends just like this. We can
Yeah.
still have fun till we wet our pants a little bit without all that, and it's all good. you know so my question for you is I think it's really hard for someone to get onto the path of finding health and well-being unless that person got really sick or weak or got affected by something. At least that's true for me and for a lot of friends around me. Like, we don't really get that wake-up call till it's almost a little too late.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, oh man, I'm too fat, my cholesterol's too high, my blood pressure is out of whack, I feel weak, I feel tired, I feel sick all the time, that kind of stuff. How do you raise awareness for people? Like, how do you help someone who's still doing okay, but they haven't hit like rock bottom? Like, what's your approach to helping these people? I'm really curious, because
Yeah.
men are fucking stubborn, you know?
Yeah, they are. Um, well, first of all, no one's gonna come see me unless they're already open to it. You know what I mean? They're open, they're willing to learn, or they've come to a place where something's not working. So whether or not they've hit rock bottom, no one really comes in my door completely oblivious. Um, that being said, I work with a person where they're at. I ask questions, like, what's going on in your life? What's your diet like? What's your relationship like? Like, I try to cover a lot of different areas, and then go from there. Because the reality is this: you're right. Unless you're unless you get ill or you get sick, what you just keep living your life. You keep going through the motions. Most people, they're just trying to like do their thing and work their job and provide for the family and work 50, 60, 70, 89 hours, 90 hours a week, whatever the case may be. Maybe they didn't stumble upon this information because it's not educated. We're not educated on this in school. Where's the high school class on how to really be healthy? Even college classes. So, and a lot of this runs counter to what a lot of the mainstream pushes out there. And so it's a tricky situation, but I just start with education and sending people articles or asking questions and proposing different things to them. Like, how do you feel? What do you eat? Like, are you aware of how you feel when you eat something or when you drink? And how do what do you feel like the next day? It's just, I try to bring it back to them and ask them their questions, because the reality is the education's not out there. Like, it's not blasted across the news unless you go searching for it, in my opinion. Now, general things like stress kills but in terms of like specifically, like, you're not going to go see a commercial for or a news show that says you should all stop drinking coffee. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's too much money involved in everyone having their coffee. There's millions and millions of coffee shops in every corner. So it doesn't make economic sense for people to stop drinking coffee or even drinking alcohol. How many commercials are alcohol commercials? You know what I'm saying? So it comes back to each individual. Like, I'm such a huge proponent of personal responsibility, and that each man, and again, this show is for fathers, like, each man needs to look in the mirror and live in a state of self-inquiry and being like, is this thing that I'm doing, is it bettering my life or is it doing the opposite? You know what I mean? Like, and hopefully they have some awareness to see, like, oh, okay, like, my belly keeps increasing in size with every passing year, or, you know, I'm getting more sick, or I'm waking up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, or my mind is racing, or I'm really, really emotionally reactive. And I don't know why that is. You know what I mean? Because when you're living a more present life and you're not on a biochemical roller coaster because you wake up in the morning and you need the coffee, and then you're jacked up from the coffee, and then you come down and you need more coffee or you need some sugar, and then you're jacked up from that, combined with the stress from your daily life, work, family, kids, etc. Okay, whatever that is, you come home and your nervous system, let's say, is not operating at a kind of balanced state. And then what's the thing that you turn to right away? Maybe just a glass of wine or a beer or some weed or something else. And then you come down and then you go to sleep and then you repeat the process. And this happens over, 20, 30, 40 years for some people. So it's like, how do you get off that biochemical roller coaster? And it comes back to the individual. And so if they come to see me, or if they call me or email me, we have a conversation. And that conversation goes different ways depending on the person. Like, there's different questions I'll ask them, but I really want to get clear on what their day-to-day life is like. Does that answer your question?
For sure. And I think like what one thing you're saying is not about say no to coffee or wine or to weed like 100%. Is about having a healthy relationship with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, how awesome would be if one can enjoy like a really good cup of coffee when you really want to just enjoy coffee, instead of forcing yourself like drinking like 4 shots from what's a coffee shop, a Starbucks,
Starbucks.
right?
Yeah.
Like going to like a zombie, getting lying. It's like, okay, I need my coffee to wake up.
You have
I
to
mean,
function.
that's a horrible relationship with coffee, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
basically will become a little slave to to coffee. But instead, having a healthy relationship with coffee or alcohol or weed, just like, hey man, this is great time, great coffee, gotta enjoy myself. How awesome is that, right? And I think what our conversation last year, what I got from that is like, man, I'm really abusing my relationship with coffee, and I don't like that, because I really love coffee and I don't want to have that weird relationship with it. Now I have very healthy relationship with coffee. Like, if
It's awesome.
I really need to pick me up, or say I have to do a super long drive, maybe I'll have a little tiny bit of coffee, and that really actually get me going for a long time. And I don't need to drink it again the next day. I'm like, thank you for serving me. I'm good.
Yeah, that's a good relationship. A lot of people, unfortunately, they don't have that, or they haven't been through the process of going off of it and then coming back on it and then realizing they get hooked back on it. And then it's a process, with any addiction. It's like sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps. You got to kind of dance with it. And I agree. Like, if a person wants to have a really nice meal and then after that meal they sip on an espresso, like, that's a lot healthier than just you're waking up in the morning on a completely empty stomach, like you said, zombie-like, and going for not even good coffee. You're talking about like
Right.
corporate chemicalized coffee. Who knows
Mm-hmm.
how those beans were processed, where they come from. So if a
Mm-hmm.
person orders like the best beans they can and they grind them themselves at home, and they enjoy a nice cup of coffee once in a while, that's awesome. Like, personally, I know my system and my body. I have a real sensitive disposition. So like, if I have a cup of coffee, I'm bouncing on walls. I'm just flying like crazy. That's how it was. I mean, I haven't had coffee in over 6 years, but when I used to have coffee, it was, I mean, I liked it. Let's just say I liked it. I was just like, but I felt it in my system. I felt it in my body. I felt it come down. So you hit the nail on the head, and it's relates back to what I said earlier about what is it that you do habitually that you're not even paying attention to, and how do you redefine your relationship to it?
Yeah.
Because I think people, every person has to decide for themselves what's right and how they want to live. Like, I don't expect people to live how I live, and at the same time, if certain things aren't going well in a person's life, And then I ask them like, okay, well, how often do you drink? How often do you consume coffee? How often do you partake in this or that substance? And then they give me an answer that in my mind goes, well, what would your life look like if you didn't have that? And I mean, sometimes that question alone is destabilizing.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many people, even this conversation alone is probably super triggering to a lot of people. I mean, the idea that like going off coffee is one, an option, two, could potentially have a huge benefit on your health and your relationship to yourself and your relationship to your emotions and your environment, et cetera, is like another language, like speaking another language, you know? So, but I mean, I think that's awesome that you did, and you know that we had that conversation the first time we really connected. And I remember when you messaged me, I think it was like a week later, you said you were off coffee, and I was like, oh wow, cool. Because sometimes I'm just having a conversation. I'm giving my gift, or I'm being me, and I didn't know, like, I know you said you drank coffee, but I didn't know like it was something you were grappling with, and then you actually made a choice. So to hear you say like we had a conversation and that had an impact on you, I mean, it's kind of reaffirming to me when I get down on myself, oh, I shouldn't talk, I should just be quiet. It's like, well, no, people ask me a question, I should respond and answer, and answer with my passion and my conviction that I have. So thank you, and I commend you, man, for doing it, because I think that's a heroic act. Like, I love talking about the individual and heroism and what we do in our day-to-day that's heroic, that helps us work through our challenges and moves us closer towards being the best version of ourselves. And something like that, I think is heroic. Like, you know what? I have this addiction. I have this thing that I'm hooked on, and I just can't wake up, or I can't function without it, whatever the case may be. And you're just like, no, like N-O, these two powerful letters, this powerful word in the English language. For me, I think it's so powerful. And how often do we feel the power of that with ourselves and with the things that we've done, or the patterns that we've been conditioned, whether it's by society, by our peer group, by whatever, to be able to stand firm in our own sense of who we are and be like, no, I today I'm gonna win this battle today with you, coffee. And that's how I look at it, you know.
And I agree with you. I believe this conversation right now is super triggering, because remember in the car ride with you and Jendra, like the whole time you guys were talking about that, I was like, my head was like, no, fuck you. I love my coffee. Fuck you. You know, shut the fuck up. You know, I'm like, no, I love coffee. What are you talking about? Like, my coffee is awesome. You know, I love my coffee. I'm committed to coffee. You know, I make my own coffee. I love it. It's my morning ritual. Yeah. It's a ritual, right? Yeah. That's what I tell myself. But then I realized, man, it's a ritual, but I'm became a slave to that ritual. You know, it's not serving me.
That's it.
Like it's controlling me. It's not serving me. So whoever is feeling triggered right now, just let you know it's normal, and you don't have to stop drinking coffee. This is just one element that we're talking about. This could be something else. It could be a abusive relationship. It can be alcohol. It could be tobacco. It could be something that's not really.
It could be pornography. That's another big thing for men.
Right.
You know?
I'm not ready for that one yet.
But, no, I got it. I hear you. But whatever, you know, I hear you. Whatever it is, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right. Whatever it is, it's not just one thing. It's just for a opportunity for us to look inside and see what's been controlling us. Right. Yeah. And we're not asking everyone to live like a monk. I mean, even monk, there's be something controlling them.
Oh yeah.
Right. And but the purpose is to live a healthier and happier life. And that we can all agree on.
Yeah. I mean, for monks, sometimes it's meditation and silence that they keep turning to all the time. You know, it could be its own thing, but I hear you. Each person has to decide what's right for them, you know, and who they want to be. And listen, when the topic of coffee, I mean, for fathers, you know, if you have young children and you're not getting as much sleep and you have a job that requires a lot and you work really hard, it can be tricky. You
Yeah.
know, my brother was off coffee for a long time, and he works a stressful job with different hours. He's an assistant director on movie sets, commercial sets, and you know, he was off coffee. He had his first kid, and you know, you work 16, 17, 18-hour days, or you fly to China and then you come back and you go directly to another job in the morning, and then you have, you know, it's like, so he's kind of, you know, he's had his coffee occasionally, and now he's off of it. And so again, each person needs to figure it out, because I know him and he knows how good he feels and how present he feels when he's not on it regularly. So I don't think he'd mind me sharing that, but if he does, he could, you know, punch me in the face when he sees me. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Introspection and self-inquiry, and you know, we spend so much time focused on the external world, and how much time is spent internally, and questioning why we do the things we do. And I think more of the emphasis needs to be put on that, in my opinion.
So true. So true. Yeah, like I think you would agree on this. Like sometimes we just get so used to the life that's thrown at us, you know, just going to corporate, work your ass off, provide for your family. And we stop thinking and realizing that's not what life is about. Life is a lot more than that. But a lot of people just get stuck in that mold, especially I think like growing up Asian, you know, that's what we're taught. Just like study hard, then work hard, and then start a family and work even harder to provide, and that's your whole life. And at 60 years old, yes, most people who follow that routine or that lifestyle has a better than average life, but then they also have a fucked up health. Yeah. Now they have to spend a lot more money to fix their health now, different medications, and not having energy, and a shortened life with their family, and paying for it, you know.
There's real quickly, again, I love thinking of these quotes, but based on what you said, there's this one quote I really liked, which was like, most people spend their health trying to achieve wealth, and then they end up having to spend their wealth to regain their health, you know, in their later years. And you know, everyone's situation is different, and where they come from, and their education level, but while it's cliche to say, it's how do we find some semblance of balance? You know, how do we do that? And yeah, it's tricky, I think, for all of us, and especially for fathers.
Yeah.
You know, because there is that pressure to provide and be the leader and set the right example.
Yeah.
But what example though then are you setting if you're not taking care of yourself? You know, like your children see that. You know, they don't always listen to what you say; they watch what you do. And again, I say that as someone who's just not as from experience, but just someone who's educated in this stuff. And you know, your actions mean a lot. And you know, I have people I work with who a lot of times it's like it's hard for them to make the changes. Like they want to make it for themselves, but sometimes when like just even that seed is planted about like making the change for the future of their children, that's where it lands home for them. You know, like if they get healthy, you know, how is that going to impact? If they have better habits, how's that going to impact their child's future and how the child evolves into the person they're going to become? So that's a whole another angle to look at it.
Yeah, I think you know, stress, trauma, they're all passed down to generations. You know, I think somewhere I read about why it is important for a husband to be supportive during the pregnancy of one's wife. What I read was during the pregnancy, like how stress can be passed down to generations. So during pregnancy, if a woman is feeling stressed and depressed, her body will secrete a lot of different kind of hormone or cytokine to deal with the stress. So the little baby in her womb will pick up the same chemical signals. So that high stress hormone level or cytokine growth factors environment becomes the baby's baseline.
Yeah.
So instead of that being the stress level of maybe a lower stress level that should be abnormal, now that high stress level become the baseline for the baby. So that when the baby is born, the baby will spend maybe it's his or her entire life to seek out for stress because that's what feels normal for them. And that's fucking sad.
It's fucking crazy. And then the absence of stress is what makes a person that's in that state feel uncomfortable. So if they start, if they let's say later on in their life, a boy, a man, or a woman meets someone who like treats them well, like that might like freak them out. Like wait, no, I'm used to chaos. I'm used to stress, because their first environment, and maybe that then carried over in their early years, was that baseline. And so anything that's not that actually ends up causing more causing a person to potentially like freak out and get into like a, let's say, a fight or flight mode.
Yes, and like you said earlier, self-sabotage, right? Like now I'm good, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm calm. No, like this doesn't feel normal. Let me sabotage myself and do some shitty things so I feel stressed and normal again. And that's just not how any parent would want to see their kid to become. I don't believe any parent would want their kid to, but if we don't pay attention, that can become their reality or normal baseline.
You brought up something that I think a lot of people don't even know, so that's awesome. But like a child's environment starts at conception, doesn't start at birth. And so like they're in the womb during that 9-month period, and so their environment, the stress levels of the mother really can have an impact on the child. And to take it a whole nother, like a deeper level, is that the psycho-emotional state, like the psychology of the female too, can have a really big impact on the child as well. So there was who's the stress, I think Robert Sapolsky. He's a stress expert. He wrote a book called "My Zebra Has No Ulcers," and he's written other books. And he talked about that idea regarding what you said about the stress hormones that are being exchanged in that during the uterine period. And who was the other? There's a woman. My wife right now is working on her PhD in depth psychology with an emphasis on somatic studies. It's a little alternative. It's a study of the unconscious, but bringing the physical piece into it. So she's doing her dissertation on touch. And so there's this, one of the most well-known touch researchers, I believe her name is I believe it's Dr. Fields. And there was a study done that they separated pregnant women into high anger category versus low anger. And that the high anger category, like the child dealt with developmental delays and other emotional issues, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we're bringing this back to stress, like, and being mindful of the impact that your environment has on you. And it starts early on, and it starts even before that. Sometimes it starts with how the second, third, fourth generation before that, grandparents, how they live their life can be passed down as well. So it's like, you may not even know why you're stressed out because of it might not even be because of your parents. And I like to use this example because it's a little crazy and alternative, but when I was in my nutrition school, this was about 13 years ago, I did a program at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which was an online nutrition school, but at the time I did it in person. And the teacher there was talking about this idea about, the emotional state, the psychological state of the parent, the mother, while the baby was in the womb. And this one woman got up to raise her hand to talk. And I'll never forget this. And she got up to share her story. And she said her whole life, she felt like she didn't belong. And she grappled with um, suicide and emotional issues. And I think it was like a year prior to that, she had a conversation with her mother's sister. And the sister told her aunt told her that during her whole birth, her mom didn't want to have her, like wanted to have an abortion. And so I bring that up just to showcase like the thoughts we think, especially in that period, can have an impact on it, or even just the early environment, the first few years of a child's life, are really, really important. So again, not to say that if things were a little chaotic, things are like it's all over. Like it's just to know, like right now, like all we could start is from this present moment on, is like what can we do to create a better environment for ourselves, and if we're a parent, to create a better environment for our children.
Yes. Yeah, we're not having this conversation to turn anyone into a victim. On the contrary, we want to do the opposite, is to having, like you said, the awareness first. Without the awareness, nothing's going to change.
No.
So pay attention to who I am at this point, and decide where I want to go, and find the right tools, find the right person, right coach to help you deal with the stuff and get to where you want. That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, personal responsibility, empowerment, that's where it comes down to. Yeah. And knowing that you have the ability to choose and to change your circumstances. It just sometimes takes a little work and strength, and being open to support. You said it earlier about men, us men, like we're stubborn and we think we could figure it out all on our own. And before you know it, 30 years go by and we have a heart attack, and it's like, how can you be vulnerable enough to admit to yourself, like, hey, I don't have the answers in this one area. Maybe I'm a super, super successful business person, but my health is shit, or something else isn't going well, or my relationship to my children, my wife isn't good. It's like, okay, well, what do you have to do then? Who are you going to reach out to? What book are you going to pick up? What tools are you going to integrate into your life to improve? And I mean, I think we're connected because we share the desire to keep improving as men, and being honest with ourselves and paying attention in our lives to how we can improve. And it's been a driving force in my life. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think because I had a grandfather that lived to 101 years old. And what I learned from that experience is one of a father's greatest gift to his children is to have a long life, to have that long fatherly presence for as long as you can, because that's such a blessing for the whole family, for my mom, for me. Having my grandfather around is just such a blessing, and I can't imagine if he, say, passed away when he was 75 and I lost 25 years of that time with him. How would that be for me? So I kind of developed a saying like longevity is a virtue in a way, like if you live long and healthy for your family and bring your presence and give to them consistently for a long time, that's a fucking virtue, and that's something worth fighting for. And that's what I want for my kids. I want to live long for them to the best of my ability,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And my father turns 90 in June. So he was 50 when I was born. So I came in, but he's still going, he's still doing his thing, and he has his health to the degree that he has it for 90 years old. So I'm grateful.
What a blessing, man. What a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since we talk about coffee and we're trying to get people off coffee, what are your, we got to be responsible in case someone actually get off coffee after this conversation. What are some of the ways one can do to naturally stay energetic, stay focused and present, say without coffee? So, like, for example, I got into breath work last year. About around the same time, I stopped drinking coffee, and I was so amazed by just doing 30 minutes of the one I learned was Wim Hof. I don't know if you heard of Wim
Yeah,
Hof.
I have.
So Wim Hof actually is not just, most people know Wim Hof about the ice bath or the cold dipping, but another major piece for his work is actually breath work. And there's a specific sequence that he does. And some people believe that will release the DMT from your nervous system, something make you feel holy and great and present. And it definitely got me there, just by 30 minutes of doing the breath work, following the like his very specific steps. I was able to get to, like, even I just have 3 hours sleep, I'll be super awake, I'll be super present, and have a super clear head. So that's one thing I have kind of been doing consistently since I took off on coffee. And I started taking certain supplements too to help kind of balance my chemistry in my body. But what's your take? What are some of the things people can do to stay awake?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to talk about even just going off coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people go off cold turkey, which
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you did, right?
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, everyone's different. Some people want to rip the Band-Aid off and get right to it, and deal with potential headaches. I mean, I don't know if you had headaches for a few days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
3 days.
3 days.
Excruciating headaches.
And for me, like, that alone is the signal. Nothing that's really healthy for you should be having that kind of reaction, should be doing that to you if you stop using it. That's just my thought. So that being said, you said earlier about it being a ritual. I tell people, keep the ritual, change the substance. But if you are going to go off coffee, if you don't go cold turkey, I work with people to let them know to wean off of it. So let's say there's a coffee substitute. Like, there's different coffee substitutes out there that are made from, like, I don't know, like roasted chicory root or whatever, like Dandy Blends a company, Ticino, all these different things, So you can make your coffee, and then one day maybe it's like 80% coffee, 20%, and then 70-30 and 60-40. You can kind of wean yourself off over a 1 or 2 week period. I don't know. I kind of feel like, hey, just deal with it, rip the Band-Aid off. But again, everyone's different, so I want to present options, because it could, to one person, it could be like, fuck it, I'm not drinking coffee. But then the other person is like, I don't know, and they might need to just kind of come off of it slowly. So, well, the first thing is sleep. Get adequate sleep. I think that's going to help you get positive energy. Breath work works. Getting up, doing breath work, taking a cold shower works. Definitely helps wake up your body. The proper nutrition helps, because a lot of times people turn to coffee because they're eating shitty foods, and so they feel like they're drained from the shitty foods, and so they turn to the coffee to jack them up. And again, we're back on the biochemical roller coaster. It's like up and down, and so how can a person be steady? Supplements. I mean, I don't really take too many supplements. For me, it comes down to sleep, proper nutrition, cold showers, breath work. Again, I'm a body worker, so it's like, making sure your blood and your lymph and your energy is flowing through your system, through your body. There's so many different ancient practices, Chinese practices, more modern practices to kind of keep the blood flowing. That's gonna keep your energy going. Yeah, good eating, healthy eating, nice balanced eating, protein, carbs, fats, but make sure they're good quality. That's usually what I advocate for.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of trendy ways of being and different eating modalities and eating, let's say, paradigms that get promoted, but I like to keep it as balanced as you can.
Yeah, just go back to basics.
Go back to the basics.
Yeah, nothing fancy. Go back to basics. I mean, the human body has been the same way for the past few thousand years. I mean,
Yeah.
we do, we do change slightly over time and adapt to new environment and new behavior, but it's really all the same. So I agree, just go back to basics and sleep. I'm glad you talk about it, because I personally believe sleep is super important. um, for food, when human evolved, we have developed mechanism to deal with like no food for a long time, right? So the human can actually go days without food based on how we evolve, and our body can deal with that stress pretty nicely. And even when you do intermittent fasting, it's actually good for your body, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's how our body evolved. I mean, human really uh, grew up in a environment where it's not always a constant supply of food, right? So weaning ourselves of food for a period of time is actually good. But on the contrary, we don't really have a good repair or defense mechanism to lack of sleep, because human almost always, for the 99% of our existence on this earth, we have been waking up when the sun rises and going to bed when the sun goes down. So we always get plenty of sleep, because there's no light, there's no electricity. And
Yeah.
electricity is actually a very new thing to human history, right? So we haven't developed, or we haven't evolved to have a mechanism where we can deal with no sleep. So it's actually put a huge amount of stress on the body when we don't sleep well or sleep enough. Um, so I'm glad you brought it up. And
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
having
No, you
enough
could.
sleep will just actually address so many health issues that we deal with.
Yeah. I mean, it's where you regenerate. It's where, so many things happen physiologically while you sleep. And you hit the nail on the head about when you think about human history, we weren't being bombarded with all this technology and blue light frequencies, and we woke up with the sun, we went to sleep when the sun went down, and now it's the sun goes down, but then we're on our smartphone and it's blue light that's shining into our eyes, and it's signaling to the brain that it's 12 o'clock noon when it's not 12 o'clock noon. It's late at night, and our bodies should start getting ready, physiologically speaking, ready for bed, and melatonin should be being produced, and then it's like time for bed. But instead it's like all this blue light, and it's just like cortisol, cortisol, cortisol. And then people also wonder why they have difficulty sleeping, because they're watching TV till whatever time, and they're on their computers without any kind of filter or whatever the case may be to soften the light. So I'm really big on really like educating people on the impact of blue light and blue and green light frequencies and how they can impact your health. And speaking of sleep, is a person needs to really be mindful of their sleep environment. What is their room like? Is it a sacred space? Does it get dark? Do you have electronic equipment everywhere? Because that's a whole other topic when it comes to health, that has a basis in science. Is just like the different electromagnetic frequencies that are impacting a physiology that, in my opinion, has an electrical essence to it, and so can be interference there. And so the more you can have a space that, while it's very, very difficult, resembles how it would be in the natural world a long time ago, is the best thing for you. But we live in a modern world. We live in an industrial society. We live in large cities, many of us, not all of us. And so we do the best we can with what we have. But setting yourself up for success by making sure you don't have too many distractions, and that your cell phone isn't right next to your bed when you're sleeping on, is really important. But I mean, I could go down that rabbit hole, but just as a basic thing is, what's your sleep environment like? What's your room like? Is it dark? Is the temperature maybe a little cooler? A lot of those things really impact your health and your energy levels. And this is. I mean, we talk about coffee, but it's all related. If you don't get good sleep, you're gonna want coffee, because let's be real. People have responsibilities. People have to show up to work. They need to be present. If they're not that way naturally, they're going to look for something that's coming from outside themselves in order to do what they got to do. But again, it's a vicious cycle, because you start doing it, and then it's 2 days later, a week later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and it's just a part of who you are. And it gets even more difficult to change habits the longer you've been doing something. Those neural pathways are like really, really strong, and to like separate from that and create new ones, new ways of thinking, of being, of acting, it takes even more heroic strength. So sleep is hugely important.
Yeah. But I just want to make a note for the listeners. If you're listening to this podcast before you go to sleep with the cell phone next to you, you're allowed to finish this episode before you remove the electronic device out of your bed.
Or turn it off or put it on airplane mode, and you're good.
Yeah, but finish this episode, please.
Yeah, please do. Please do. And then tell us to go fuck ourselves, because we're talking about getting off coffee.
Well, you mentioned something about blue light and green light. Say a little bit more about that. I'm curious. I mean, we know blue light is bad, but I want to pick your brain on more details.
Well, okay. Like, listen, I'll be the first one to say, like, I'm not going to break down the nanometers and the scientific. That's just not my expertise. Well, and even what you said, like blue light is bad. Like, it's not bad if it's coming from the sun at during the day. You know what I mean? There's certain levels of it that are really, really important, because again, the sun signals to us what our body needs to do. You know, it's like, it is the timekeeper for our day. It impacts our circadian rhythms. Like, we have these biological clocks, and so the sun impacts that. And so if we're not honoring these natural cycles, our body's going to pay the price. So the thing that that upsets me, and it's I don't want to say upsets me, but you have to look at it in certain ways. Like, we've moved further and further away from like incandescent lighting, and we've moved towards all these energy saving lighting. Now, we may be saving energy, but there's increase in these more dangerous light frequencies that have an impact on our health. And, you know, I've read different studies and different articles on even how the street lamps in different areas and in nature are being changed as well. And they're impacting the health of the natural world of animals as well. Mm. So, you know, it's something that's really so new in our evolution. I mean, the technological, let's say our bodies aren't really evolving at the same pace that technology is advancing. And so there's such blessings and amazingness and awesomeness. I mean, the fact that we're having this podcast and you're in Taiwan and I'm in Santa Monica is incredible because of technology. But then how can we use it responsibly? How can we, again, have the self-awareness and the knowledge to go, oh, hey, okay, cool. Like, I have a filter, or I have a yellow-orange thing that I put in front of my computer. No, I didn't do it here because I would look orange to you. But usually when the sun goes down, I'm really mindful. I have a hack set up on my iPhone where I can make my iPhone red. You know, I have a shortcut to make it red. So when the sun goes down, I immediately have it red. So it's not really in my face. And my wife and I keep our place pretty dim in the evenings to do the best we can to mimic, you know, living a little bit more in the natural world. Because when we talk about health and wellness, I think one of the biggest things that has impacted our health is that human beings, we have lost complete connection to the natural world. Like spending time in nature, whatever that means, you know, it's different for everyone. And I think it impacts your health. I mean, you look at animals in nature. Granted, you know, we're animals to a certain degree, but animals in nature, they don't count calories. They intuitively know what to eat and how to be. And so human beings, like, because we have this mind and there's conflicting information and we live in this world that, let's say, is maybe not the most natural, it fucks with us in certain ways. So again, how do we recognize that and go, okay, cool, listen, I'm still going to have my smartphone. I'm still going to have my 70-inch fucking screen TV. I'm still going to be on my computer all the time because my work requires that. But then how do you help mitigate? How do you mitigate these things? And so, there's so many things we can talk about. And there's people who've committed their lives. They're like electromagnetic radiation specialists, and they study different frequencies and how the impact on the human body. And you can go crazy with this. But the simplest thing for me is, okay, like, do a hack on your phone. Like, what's the lighting like in your room at night? Like, can you soften it a little bit? Is your cell phone and your computer in your room while you sleep, like on wireless frequencies that are just going off? You're getting pulsing while you sleep. They could impact your sleep. So, and again, this is all rooted in science. I'm not just some like weird health freak talking about like, EMFs. It's a legit thing. And so again, what's your room environment like? What's your sleep environment like? What's your relationship to light? Like, are you getting sunlight? Are you getting 20 minutes of sun just kind of going on your face, on your skin? I think it's important. Now, you don't have to be out there forever getting burned, but just connecting to nature. What does that look like? Is really, really important. And so in regards to blue and green light frequencies, again, after sun goes down, what's your light environment like? Can you mimic nature to the best of your ability?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to help your sleep. That's what I got to say about that.
Yeah. Again, back to basics. Nothing complicated. No need to spend money on expensive device. Just go back to basics. Sleep.
Yeah.
Get your phone off the blue light. Go into night mode, and that's it.
Yeah.
I want to switch gear a little bit with you because I know you have such passion for health and well-being. What do you think is if you can give someone an advice on like one thing one person can do, or maybe not something you can do, but what's a key element to health and well-being besides what we talked about, like sleep or eating? Like what's the secret to, or maybe your secret to, say, anti-aging medicine? What would be that medicine? What would be a not a substance, right? I'm not talking about something to eat, but what's a advice for, say, like live longer and happy? What's that one thing based on what you do?
Based on what
and
I
I'll give
do.
you my version of it too.
Okay.
And I can go first if you.
Well, yeah. Well, maybe share your thing that may trigger, because my mind's going in a million different directions.
Sure. So my background is in science, and I work for a stem cell company, right, in regenerative medicine. So from our approach, it has been like, finding the stem cell and give it to someone, and that cell will find the tissue or organ is to be repaired and regenerate itself and all that. But the truth is, there hasn't been a good evidence that stem cell will really regenerate a really sick person, right? Maybe at a tissue level it will, maybe repair the skin, repair the bones, but I don't think there has been a stem cell that can go into someone, say, with severe diabetes and heal that person, right? That haven't happened yet. So anyway, I've been kind of asking different people about it, and the most satisfying and most interesting answer I got was from a Chinese medicine doctor who I sat with at a dinner table from kind of not intentionally. Basically, I was at a restaurant with a friend, and he bumped into his other friends and we just sat together. So I don't know this person, but he said he practiced Chinese medicine. So I picked his brains like, hey, what's Chinese medicine's approach to, you know, is there like a recipe you can give to someone and that person will just rejuvenate and regenerate? And he's like, nah. He's like, okay, imagine like the food we had was pretty good that night. And he was saying that the food is pretty good, right? Imagine right now you are sitting next to someone you really hate, like your enemy or someone who has hurt your family. And he said, would the foods still taste good to you? Will you still enjoy this experience? Well, the answer obviously is no. And he said, well, okay, now think again. Like now, if you're just having like okay food, but you're sitting with like your girlfriends, you know, like two of your girlfriends that you like, and now how would the food taste like to you, right? The whole experience will be amazing, even the food was just okay, right? So he was talking about like mindset or where your heart is or your mind is, you know, like, and that was very eye-opening for me, like by switching. Yes, like you can have the best food, but if you're sitting like next to someone you hate or you dislike a lot, it will totally ruin the experience. And which opens, and he said that the actually, so what he's trying to say is the most potent medicine is your mind. You know, if your mind is at peace, is calm, and you're at a good place, even the environment is not so okay. And that was a very satisfying answer I got, and I didn't see that coming either. So you know, and I've been paying attention to um, you know, where my mind is. So you know, last year I started doing meditation, and it's helping with that process. So that's kind of my answer, my version. I actually stole it from someone. I didn't come up with it.
No, it's okay. It's an awesome one. I kind of want to steal it too. Well, I want to steal it because even a lot of the things that we've been talking about impact your mind. You know, like that's my view on it is that like people want to separate the mind and the body, and I think it's been separated just to have a clear understanding of each one of them. But to me, it's a synergistic thing. It's like the body mind, the mind body, they work together. And so when you shift, when you can heal the body and shift the body, it's going to impact your mind. But there's also things when you can change the way you think about certain things and be able to, it's going to impact the body. So I again, it comes because again, negative thoughts are going to create stress in the body. They're going to impact you in a certain biological way, in a chemical way. That's not going to be as ideal as if you had peaceful, loving thoughts, present thoughts, optimistic thoughts. It doesn't mean you have to be that way all the time, because then we get into a whole other conversation of, I know a lot of people who try to be positive all the time and try to push down and repress any form of negativity, and that causes its own imbalances. But again, baseline and what's habitual is, are you living a life where you're present? And if something does happen, let's say you get a negative phone call, let's say something goes on in your relationship or your boss, you know, or you get fired or whatever the case may be, like, how do you handle that? You know, where is your mindset at? Where is your emotional state at? You know, are you present? Are you connected? Is your nervous system nice and like, is the baseline, is it healthy? Or is your nervous system all jacked up that the littlest thing is going to just get you off and have you going on this whole just mental looping, and your body's jacked up, angry, whatever the case may be. So, you know, again, I just think one thing, I mean, mindset to me relates to so much. I guess I know it sounds corny, but if I would just say is like this one thing is going to impact so many things is like self-love and self-acceptance. Because if you accept who you are and if you have a deep love and care for who you are, it's going to impact the relationships that you get into. It's going to impact how you treat your body. It's going to impact. It could also impact the job that you do. I mean, so many things. I think it starts back in the individual of that, I guess, baseline mental mental state of how you think and feel and how you view yourself. You know, how self-aware you are. What's your level of self-knowledge? What's your level of self-compassion? I bring it back to the self because that's the foundation. And then from then on, a healthy self is going to impact family, impact community, impact the world, impact society. And I think help you live longer. Because if you're comfortable with who you are, really solid with who you are, and take care of yourself and don't poison yourself on a regular basis with different substances and toxic foods, you know, I think it's gonna help lead to a long life. So I mean, it's not the most simple answer because I think there's so many things, but I think that level of inward focus, inward love, inward compassion, and whatever you need to do to get to that place is going to shift your mindset, and the way you think about the world, the way you think about yourself, and it's going to impact your health on so many different levels.
Yeah, actually, I think you actually brought it one level deeper of what you're saying, because at the end of the day, it's not about the girlfriends or the enemy you sit with. It's about self, right? Because I think that's what you're getting to. It's actually not about that. It's not about external. I mean, how awesome would be if you're sitting next to someone who you hate and you still have the best meal of your life. That's possible, right? If you have inner peace and you took care of yourself, like you said, self-acceptance and self-love, who cares who you sit with? You're gonna have that peace no matter the external environment. And I think that's huge. And when you mentioned something about self-acceptance, something came up, and I think it's you know, what I sense for a lot of fathers is because now in the morning they're working, and at night they're going back to the family. They have to take care of the kids, you know, take care of the wife, and be with everyone. There's really not a lot of time for them to take care of themselves, right? Or ourselves, I mean, including me. And where we are lacking on the self-acceptance, and how we can get that is I think there's an answer is to, and you and I, we both understand what it is to have our boys, have our men in our life, right? And I'm not talking about the man who you go out to a bar and get drunk with. I mean, I'm talking about like men that will really have your back, right? And we both understand that because we both have that in our life. And the man will support you and love you and hold you accountable at the same time. That's right? Hold you fucking accountable to your words, and make sure that we stay honorable to our truth, our words, our purpose. And when we find our space among our men, there's a lot of peace and self-acceptance that come with it. I mean, I think that's where I find most of my peace is from being with my men, you know, men who really, really have my back. You know, they know when I'm down, they'll bring me up, you know, and I see them down, I'll bring them up. We do that to each other all the time. We find a way to serve each other and serve the community together a lot of times, right? Like what we do for the community. And I think that's where we find self-acceptance and find our space, and we find our peace. So I just want to add to that.
Yeah, and no, it's beautiful, and I think part of the self-acceptance about having that level of connection with other men and that community and that bond is realizing that we're not alone too in the stuff that we're dealing with and we're grappling with, and that I think adds another layer of I don't want to say peace, but like I feel like a lot of people, you know, and I talk with some of my clients, and they think they're the only ones that have these thoughts, like that are grappling with these things. And sometimes I'm like, you know, I grapple with similar stuff. Like, what? What are you talking? It's just some people just don't realize it, and especially if you're living a life where you like white knuckle everything, like you're just gonna get through it, you're gonna deal with it. You got to be the rock for everyone, and it doesn't matter. And then maybe you don't have like close like social connections or friends with other men, or not even friends, but just like you said, like another man that's gonna call you out and have your back. A lot of people don't have that, and so it just up. It brings sometimes a level of suffering up, and keeps a person from getting to that place of self-acceptance. And so, yeah, I think, you know, we're social animals, and it's like, do people want to think like they're the lone wolf? Fuck this shit. I'm going to do everything on my own. And, you know, it might work for a certain period of time, but over the course of a lifetime, it ain't working. This doesn't work. It doesn't represent nature. And so it's like, you got to have your pack. You got to have your pack that has your back. You got to have your pack that has your back. Let's make a little bumper sticker
I
for
love
that.
it. Yeah, I love it.
And there's peace that comes in that, and inspiration and motivation, and yeah, I mean, I love it.
Yeah, I think you know, kind of to expand on that topic from self to finding our space among other men. It reminds me of this study or a few studies that have been done by Harvard or other universities. They're trying to kind of pinpoint what is the key to health and happiness. And it all boils down to, it's not about quitting smoking. It's not about stop drinking. It's not about getting flu shots. It's about having good relationship with those around you. You know, they found out that if you have good relationship with your siblings, uh, if you're mentoring someone, if you have a good relationship with your wife, these people tend to live healthier, longer, and happier. It's not about any vitamins they take. You know, it's not even about drinking in a way, and it's not about how much money you make. You know, it's about having a peaceful relationship with those around you. I'm a big believer of that, and that's why one of the reasons I'm doing the podcast, because I think, you know, like all fathers need to stand together and work together, you know, to make this world a better place. So that's my take on that too.
I love it. I think there's a lot of truth in that for sure.
Yeah, I want to, you know, kind of pick your brain on, like, again, going into your expertise. What are some of the stuff that you think the society is kind of being misled around health and well-being? What are some of the beliefs that we have that's not serving us? Um, um, you know, because I know you, like, for one, coffee, right? You got me off coffee, so I believe there are more topics in that area I wanna like hear your thoughts about, what are some of the stuff we're being kind of misled, or generally the society is being led on to the false belief, right? Or misguided ideas about health and well-being.
Yeah. Well, that's a loaded question with so many different
Well,
avenues to go down.
yeah,
No, no, I know.
yeah.
I hear you. We'll see what comes out of my mouth.
Yes. That's the idea.
But yeah, like I, I think first and foremost, it's like I have a kind of a running joke, and people could agree with me or not agree with me, but I kind of tell people, you shouldn't eat or drink anything that has a commercial for it, because usually the commercials that are being put out there, that's just focusing on a financial element, like advertising is big business, and our food industry isn't always focused on making sure people are eating the healthiest foods. And so most of our commercials are for foods and beverages that I wouldn't recommend a person consume unless they wanted to once in a while. But even then, what's the point? Excuse me, there's healthier options. So I think in society, I think what's really impacting us is that from a larger standpoint, I don't want to say like maybe a corporate standpoint or a government standpoint, like, being healthy and being self-responsible and taking responsibility for your health sometimes isn't good for business. Um, like I mean, like if everyone was healthy, hospitals would go out of business. Doctors wouldn't have the same level of business that they have. So it's a tricky thing, to talk about this. Is that I think we're just being conditioned away from the things we're talking about on this podcast, around connecting more to people, on spending more time in nature, on spending less time on our devices, or at least when we're on our devices, like we're doing it more consciously. So yeah, like it's a great question, and I feel like there's so many different avenues to go down.
Before you go into a different avenue, which I believe you will, I just want to point out how profound that was. Like, if we all take on stopping or drinking anything we see on commercial for a month, and imagine how that would impact our life, because basically that's all I want to eat when I turn on the TV. Like, I want to take on whatever the commercial is telling me. I mean, every time I see a Coca-Cola commercial, I'm like, oh man, I need to have a Coca-Cola. Or not even that, because that's the obvious one, but just everything on TV. You're right. It's not on TV because it's healthy. It's on TV because it's generating money, and it's not always related to health. One of my observations during the COVID-19 pandemic is that for the few times I went into the supermarket, one thing I observed is that all the greens, all the vegetables, fully stocked.
Yep.
Like that's what I love, by the way. I love vegetables. I love cooking vegetable soup, nourishing vegetable soup. I love that. So I went in, like, everything I want is still there. All the organic stuff, fully stocked. But when I walk by the frozen section, they're all gone. Right? And to me, that is fucking crazy. Like this is the time you want to treat your body well and eat nutritious and clean food to help your body to fight any potential infection. But all the green stuff are still there, but all the frozen sections, like 90% gone. Like, I'm like, wow, that's how people respond to this. And now you have time to stay at home and cook. How come we're not doing that as a society. We're naturally leaning towards the frozen food. And I think you're right, because it's what's on TV, that's being advertised. Like nobody's selling fucking like organic
No.
carrots or
Yeah.
lettuce or
there isn't a Super Bowl commercial for your local farmer's market.
exactly.
You know what I mean? And back to what you said, like, I agree. I think in the beginning it might have been a little bit towards like, well, what if the supply chain goes down and we need things frozen? I need to put everything in my freezer. But ideally, I'm there with you. Like, I go into the supermarket. Oh, everything I want is there. I don't even go down those aisles. I can't remember the last time I've gone down those aisles. Like pretty much 100% of the food I eat is local and organic. Now, there's some privilege with that. Most people in this country, and I'll just speak in terms of the U.S., unfortunately, we got to go towards the fact that a lot of the stuff that isn't healthy is being subsidized. Organic people aren't being encouraged to eat organic foods. So that's not being subsidized. So there's a whole tricky, this whole conversation we could get into around that. But yeah, like don't eat food that's on commercials. Like start there. And the reason why is, we're influenced by the media we watch. Our brains get impacted. Our psychology gets impacted. I mean, there has been so much research and so much written about how our minds can be manipulated by media and can be impacted by the media we watch. And so, just from the TV shows you watch, the movies you watch, everyone's drinking coffee. I mean, those are there for a reason, in my opinion. And they impact people. So I watch movies here and there. I watch, and I'm an ex-actor. I used to act for a while, and I love film, I love TV, but because I started learning more and more of how I had to start being more conscious of what I was watching, because I'm getting programmed subconsciously by the media that I take in. Now that may seem crazy to a lot of people, but if you go down that rabbit hole and you look it up, it's a real thing. So commercials and advertisers, people that are working in the advertising industry, they understand the human psyche on levels that the average person has no idea. If you go back to the early 20th century and look up a guy called Edward Bernays, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he utilized his uncle's understanding of the deepest, darkest desires and understanding of the human unconscious. He used it in the early 1900s and throughout like the 20th century to help advertising companies manipulate the population into buying their products. So it's just something to think about, that, you just have to be mindful of this. It's a real thing that people do. I mean, I'm not making this up. And so when you say, oh, I watch these commercials and I want those things, like, that's because they're doing their job. Like, people don't spend millions and millions of dollars on Super Bowl commercials unless they work. So, okay, what's the solution then? Maybe press mute during commercials. Press mute during commercials, so you're just watching the thing that you're watching. And again, it sounds crazy, but this stuff, I'm not just making this up. This stuff is backed by, you can watch YouTube videos of college psychologists, PhDs, talking about this exact thing, on the media and the media's impact on our behavior. So I know we went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but
that's what we do here, rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
I love rabbit holes, and it comes back to personal responsibility. Like, you know what I mean? Like, are you responsible with what you're consuming? And it's not even consumption of just food, it's consumption of the media. What are you allowing? Okay, you go back to what the Chinese doctor said. He talked about your mindset. Okay, what influences a person's mindset more than what they're taking in through their mind, through their content? Hopefully they're listening to podcasts like this where they're learning something, as opposed to something that's not uplifting them towards being the best version of themselves. And I'm not fucking around when I say that a person consciously may think like, oh, this isn't impacting me, this isn't affecting me, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's impacting you on a subconscious level that you have no conscious understanding of it. And so one of my biggest things of my work with people to help them overcome self-sabotage is getting them to understand this simple fact of how the media that they take in is impacting them on such deep subconscious levels. And it's going to impact how they eat. It's going to impact very often the relationships they get into. It's going to impact how they behave in society. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think advertisers will be the first one to jump on any potential mind control techniques.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I studied social psychology in college, they gave an example, like during the early days of movies, they put, so, movies is like about 30 frames per second, right? So they will put in like one frame per this 30 seconds, say, drink Coca-Cola or buy popcorns in there, and into the movie, and want to see if people actually buy more popcorns or Coca-Cola. Well, the good thing is it actually didn't affect people. It didn't change their behavior. But I think the important thing is they'll fucking try it.
Yeah.
And if it fucking works, they'll continue to do it. And there are many other examples where it actually works. So they will use what people found in social psychology and implement it into advertisement. And believe me, they'll always be the first one to implement it, and they will be the one who pay attention to what works and what not, and actually use it. So I agree with you. The influence of these commercials are more profound than we want to believe.
Yeah, the commercials, movies, TV shows, media. If you a docu-series I recommend is The Century of the Self. It was a BBC documentary, I believe in 2004, by someone called Adam Curtis. It's 4-part, and they explore Edward Bernays and the history of utilizing, the media and certain other propaganda techniques to get people to do certain things. Let's just say, and it's fascinating. It's 4-part series. You can find it on YouTube. And it goes into this topic on a much, much deeper level.
What's it called again?
The Century of the Self.
Century of the Self. All right.
I think it's 4 50-minute or 4 1-hour episodes that was featured, I believe it was like early 2000s on the BBC network. And it's really cool. And especially when you go into and you learn about the history and of Edward Bernays and the work that he did. It's fascinating.
Oh, more rabbit holes.
Yeah, I love rabbit holes. I spent a lot of time going down them.
Oh man, maybe we should change this podcast to 12 Summers of Rabbit Holes. That's what I love.
Yeah, no, it's
rabbit
inspiring,
holes.
man. It's inspiring to talk about this stuff and to share this with you.
Yeah. What other, say, documentaries or films or TV programs would you actually also recommend people to watch, like regarding the topics we talk about today?
Yeah, there was a documentary that came out in, I think it was 2007, and it was when I was in this nutrition school, and a couple of the people that were featured in that documentary were speakers at my school, and it's called Food Inc. I don't know if you ever saw it, Food Inc. And really, yeah, just a really awesome documentary that talks about the food industry and the food system and how we've just kind of moved away from smaller farming operations to like these large operations, and subsidizing these like monocultures of like corn, soy, etc., wheat, and but it goes into a lot. I haven't seen it in 13 years, but it's something I recommend to a lot of people. It's a good intro, and obviously things have changed in 13 years, but that's definitely one that comes to my mind. It's funny, I've seen so many, and then you ask this question and I go blank.
I have a movie on Netflix called Heal.
Oh, I saw Heal. Yeah, I like
how do you
elements
like
of
that
it.
one?
Yeah, I like certain elements of it. You know, I tend to be pretty picky where I watch something
Hmm.
and certain experts or speakers I agree with, some I don't.
Hmm.
But that's just how I am. You
What
know,
are the parts you like, and what are the parts you don't like?
of Heel, I couldn't really tell you off the top of my head
I
because I
see.
saw it right when it came out.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
The part I
yeah,
like was like really similar to what we talk about today. Like I wasn't really paying attention to like specific methods they use to heal their body, but I think the mindset and the power of mind and power of spirits. You know, a lot of people who thought like they don't even know why they're sick. You know, but then they start dealing with the stress or the hidden stress or the stuff they haven't been facing, and they start to heal their body. That's what I got. Yeah, I
yeah,
wasn't into kind of the voodoo path some of them took, and I think it's if it helped them, awesome.
yeah.
It's just not something I'm familiar with.
Listen, the placebo effect is real, you know?
Hmm.
So again, like if you believe that you're going to get better, you're probably more likely to get better than someone who doesn't believe they're going to get better.
Hmm.
Like if let's say you're given a death sentence by, your physician that like, hey, listen, you only have 6 months to live. There's some people who take that and say, fuck it, I'm gonna beat this. And I've heard countless of stories and examples of people who have and other people who don't. And I think your mindset has a lot to do with it. So I mean, you're with it all the time. So except when you're sleeping, but even when you're sleeping, you're in the dream world, and so that's having its impact on you as well. But mindset's huge, especially when it comes to illness and
Hmm.
believing that you have the strength and the wherewithal, and you don't get lost in the victim state. It's okay. Listen, I completely honor people, having those moments where they feel like, they're not going to be able to overcome something, but don't live in that moment, like you can have those moments, but again, it comes back to heroism and living a heroic life and being faced with something challenging, an illness or a setback or whatever the case may be. And how do you respond? How do you respond to that? Do you let you get
Hmm.
it down, or do you use it as fuel and strength to overcome it? And this is why I love some of these more epic myths and stories that we've learned growing up, or you think back to you think back to the work of Joseph Campbell, and I mean, shit. If you even just think about the Lord of the Rings, like the Lord of the Rings as a myth, as a movie of people coming together, of rising up, of people who you wouldn't even think, like the hobbits, who you wouldn't even think would be able to have such an impact on the planet, if they dig deep within themselves and they persevere and they overtake and they beat some evil. But whatever that evil is in your life, it could be a sickness, it could be something else. It's like these are powerful myths that can help guide us towards living more heroically. And that's why I think people should expose themselves more to these kinds of stories and these kinds of myths that have staying power, that are deeply, deeply powerful, because they can impact us on our day-to-day life, as opposed to just watching a show where people are living their worst lives and not being their best selves all the time. It can be fun once in a while, but like, how is that programming you? You know, Again, it's called TV programming for a reason. But like, how is that impacting you and impacting your sense of self and impacting your relationships when all you're seeing in front of you is the most dysfunctional behavior that exists? Is that something that you want to model yourself and your life after? Especially when we know it impacts you on a subconscious level. Personally, I don't. And so that's why I made a choice a long time ago to just, be more mindful with the content I consume. And this is coming from someone who, I mean, I watched some fucked up shit in my life and loved it. And I won't even go into what, you could just use your imagination. So, so it's just like, I had to make that connection with myself and how that was impacting me and how it wasn't bringing more peace and
Hmm.
presence into my life and making me feel more empowered. So again, another rabbit hole, but it's really It's really, really important. And your audience is going to think I'm fucking crazy.
You are a little bit, and I am too. That's why
Yeah.
we're doing this, which is a perfect segue to maybe the final question for you is,
Okay.
because I know you've been thinking about maybe starting your own podcast, right?
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit of what you want to do, and maybe when you want to start doing it. I'm I'm a big supporter for anyone who wants to start their own podcast. I think we are just at the very beginning of exploring what podcasts can do for the whole humanity. You know, imagine like 10 years ago, we can't do this. You have to be invited to a radio show, to a TV
Big
program.
studio.
Now you just need your phone. You don't even need
Yeah.
fancy. You just need the phone and these earphones that come with your phone. You can start doing podcasts. So so I think it's awesome. I know you've been thinking about it, and you know, maybe talk a little bit about what you want to talk about. I mean, you know, and when you want to start, you know. And
Well,
and it's all coming from like, I want you to win, you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, first of all, you asking me to be on this helps, just because there is a simplicity to it, like having Zoom and having an interview, and then, you know, I think once I get over some of the initial, I guess you could say fears, but like, you know, technology isn't my forte, you know, like isn't my area of expertise, and so I think just doing it comes down to just doing it. So I've been thinking about it for a while. I've been moving slowly into the direction of it. I've been on a couple podcasts, and I think what my plan is I want it to be around like what is true health, but like true health. I haven't really come up with a title yet. It might be true health beyond the status quo, because again, I like to very often challenge conventional narratives, mainstream narratives, you know, give voice to people who maybe think about things in a different way, perhaps in similar ways to me, or maybe, you know, someone who brings a different viewpoint up. And I love the path of the individual, and the people who have, keep bringing up this topic, but people who have maybe, again, gone against the consensus and have bucked the status quo and have challenged maybe certain authorities, and what does that take as an individual? What has that done for them in their own growth process? So like, while I want it to be around health, I also want it to be around the journey a person has taken towards becoming the person they want to be, towards becoming the person they've become in these different areas. And when I talk about health, I mean health in like a broad spectrum. It's beyond what you put in your mouth and how you exercise. It's again, looking at yourself, looking at the health of the individual, the health, relationship health, spiritual health, societal health, you know, and whoever I can get to talk about different issues and have a dialogue and conversation, because I love having conversations and I love talking about this stuff. And it's something that people have told me for a long time. Why don't you have a podcast and just interview and it's pretty much having a freaking conversation with another human being or another two human beings, however you do it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm still in the beginning stages of adding that piece to my repertoire, in addition to my coaching practice, my bodywork practice. I kind of have my own signature system that I've developed to work with people in 3-month, 6-month programs. And I, unfortunately, the pandemic, this whole situation, I started a single day event for men in Los Angeles called Somatic Freedom, a pathway to true health. And I had my first event. There was about 12 men there.
Wow.
And it's really, really deep somatic. And by somatic, I mean of the body. Soma is the Greek word for body. So deep physical practices to help remove excess stress, excess tension, toxicity, and trauma from the nervous system, from the body. And it was such a success that I had my next one scheduled for April 5th, but I had to cancel it because of everything that went down. So I think by doing my workshops and having my coaching practice, but then having my podcast, I feel really good about these different avenues of sharing my gifts and also learning and presenting, just like you're doing with this, like presenting the people that are drawn to you and drawn to your podcast, presenting them with information that, maybe they don't have access to. And so it's something that I want to do, is I want to be able to present really cool information to people and awesome guests, and maybe perhaps controversial guests, because I like
so awesome.
I like stirring the pot, and I like making people think, and I think that's where creativity comes from, when there's a little conflict either within yourself or with other people. I think it gets the juices flowing, and I think it's healthy to challenge your beliefs. I'm always challenging my beliefs. I do whatever I can to get outside my own echo chamber, where I'm just surrounded by people that believe the things that I believe and think the things that I think, and because it feels safe to be in that place. And I kind of want to have I want to go somewhere where it's uncomfortable, where I'm questioning my beliefs. Like, oh shit, like, wait, why is that true? Where did I learn it? Oh, okay, I read a single article, or I listened to one person, and then it just became my belief. Like, but have I investigated it for myself? Have I spent hundreds of hours or a few hours, or reading a different book, or taking something off a bookshelf, or talking to another doctor or a physician that maybe disagrees with something that, someone on CNN is talking about? So I like these things, and it's not about, sometimes it's not even about right or wrong, although I do have a passion for truth, whatever that means. But I have a passion for it. So it's like, I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm so passionate about like topics around truth, around health, around freedom, around the individual, around the health of a society, which I think starts with the health of individuals, and just thinking about different people I want to reach out to, and maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no, maybe they'll ignore my messages. But that's kind of where I'm at, Chu.
Awesome. And I'll share with you, like, I was in the same phase for like 6 months, and I was researching for the best microphone, the best earphone, the best amplifier. I'm just like taking notes and all that, and I realized I was just procrastinating by trying to find the best. Then I just went talk to my buddy. He was like, oh, show me everything you have. I'll just get exactly what you have and get started. And to be honest, once you do the first one, it just all the stress is gone. Like, you just know, like, you just have to keep recording, and that's it. Nothing complicated.
Yeah. Do you have a general like maybe a few questions like that you want to kind of guide a person on, but then you just allow the conversation to go where it goes?
No, like, as you see, like, I love rabbit holes. So we just talk in general, and we see if there's a topic that we both feel passionate about. We just go in the rabbit holes, and and just, that's what I love. I mean, so I really don't have any question prepared. I just call and have a conversation, and
That's
but
cool.
I do have a purpose, which is it really, or a context, which is really the title of the podcast. So I don't deviate from that, but I love rabbit holes,
Yeah.
going through that.
That's the word. That's the word of the day.
That's the word of the day. Yeah. That's the word of the day. So
they're fun. They're fun to go down, and
yeah. So
and that's part of the introspective process, is like coming face to face with something that maybe challenges you to think about things in a new way. I guess, again, doesn't mean that you have to then adopt that as your belief.
mm-hmm.
It's just something to just jiggle your consciousness up a little bit to go, oh, whoa, oh, wow, this is interesting. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I mean, it's kind of cool. I think I'm built and designed that way. Not everyone is, and that's cool too. But I'm a lifelong learner. I love exposing myself to information and taking that information and then helping other people. That's ultimately my reason. Like education is really, really important to me. And it's a big theme of my life is supporting people and educating people to kind of maybe see beyond their established beliefs and to look beyond and not just for themselves, but in society as a whole. And with my focus being health in a very broad sense. So I appreciate you inviting me to come on today. You know, it's cool to have this conversation. You know, this is the longest conversation we've had.
Yes, it's awesome. And as an offer to like get you started, feel free when you get your podcast started. If you want to use this one as one of your episodes, feel free.
Oh, cool.
And then talk to the people who you being on the podcast for. Maybe ask the permission to use that as your episode just to get you started. I mean,
cool.
I love to hear your own podcast one day, man. Just and hope that one day comes soon. So
yeah, no, totally. Hopefully
it'll be fun.
Hopefully you enjoy the content, and you know,
sure.
you might agree with some of it, you might disagree with other, but hey, that's what I'm all about. I want to stir the pot a little bit.
Yes, that'll be the best part. That'll be the best part. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Chu.
Thank you for your time, man. I super appreciate it. And
enjoy your time with family in Taiwan, and I look forward to seeing you when you're back in Los Angeles, whenever that is.
Yes. Thank you.
Cool, brother. Be well, brother.
Week.
Yeah, man. Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.